I did have a question. I'm supposed
You so much for coming out tonight.
Recording in
Tonight we're
progress.
doing the live performance panel with our lovely speakers, Daniella Kistemaker, Zack Elliott, and who will be joining us later, Lyric Dubee. So before we begin, I'll just be reading off our land acknowledgement and then I'll get into our speaker bios. So today I'm hosting this session from Barrie, Ontario, home to the Anishinaabe people who are made up of the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, or together the Three Fires Confederacy. At the Co-op, we read these land acknowledgements to commit ourselves to honoring the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples of this land, and we encourage everyone to reflect upon their history with the land and with the people who have cared for and cultivated it. So to start off, I'll be reading Zack Elliott's bio. So raised in Bolton, Ontario, Zack Elliott is a contemporary folk singer-songwriter who blends personal expression with introspective inquiry. Zack's guitar compositions married with his melodic and lyrical choices leave audiences comforted, curious, and feeling like they are less alone. Zack has played stages of all sizes through the east coast of Canada and is currently writing and performing in the Columbia Valley of British Columbia. And for Daniella Kistemaker, so Daniella is a classical and contemporary Guelph-based harpist. A solo, chamber, and orchestral harpist, she received her B.Muse in harp performance at Wilfrid Laurier University in 2023. Her music style is varying amounts of classical, minimalistic, and highly rhythmic with influences from Astor Piazzolla, Philip Glass, and Maurice Ravel, and a repertoire of the traditionally classical arrangements of popular songs and original instrumental music reminiscent of her style. Recently, she has started composing a fusion of electronic and experimental music with classical music, as she feels like musical expression transcends genre. So before I let our speakers take it away, so this is a Q&A panel for everyone live in the call. Please send your questions to the chat and I will be facilitating the conversation as it comes up. If you notice that I've missed your question after a little while, feel free to resend it. But yeah, so now I'll send it over to Zack Elliott to introduce himself a little further, and then Daniella can go next. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi everyone. It's good to see it's good to see a turnout. I remember these last year and I don't think there was this attended as they are tonight. So thanks for coming after work hours. So a little bit about me. Like in my bio, I'm from Bolton, Ontario, which is about an hour, I guess, south of Barrie. Um, and if you don't know, I'm a former co-op member. And I kind of got my whole start through the co-op. I kind of just applied to the co-op as a bit of a pipe dream or kind of a Hail Mary, and I got in. And it was like really validating. And then from there, I started writing a lot more, and then I did my first gigs. So I have a lot of my like early development to thank the co-op for, really. And From there, I kind of have gone out and sought out my own opportunities. I've played in some festivals, both in Ontario and British Columbia. Um, Towards the beginning of my gigging, I started doing like the bar gigs, 3 hours here and there, and that was okay for a while, but wasn't super fulfilling, depending on the clientele that were there or the level of listening that was uh, just happening. um, and then Started to work my way into like the the conference world. So I did some showcasing with Folk Music Ontario and the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance down in New Jersey. Um, Now I'm kind of back to doing the more local gigs, but really my move out here was less of an artistic decision and more of like a lifestyle decision. And kind of hoping that, or at least trying at the idea of, um, kind of having a life that I enjoy living and I find interesting, kind of guide my creative practice. And so it's been a bit of a journey, and I've been learning lots of things since being out here. But yeah, all good things, and it's been really illuminating. So can't wait to hear your questions. You can ask me about performing. You can ask me about how to move across the country in your car. um, yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, Daniela, if you want to take it away.
Yes, I would love that. And I'm so glad, as Zach said, to see this kind of turnout. Um, my like I'm from Guelph, Ontario, and I would say my performance story is definitely quite a bit different from Zach's because I grew up very entrenched in the classical world and started performing very early. Like when I was 8 years old, I performed at the biggest venue in Guelph, along with my sister in a duo, the River Run Center. And then we ended up, and then by the age of 11, I had actually performed in the Kerner Hall in Toronto for like a solo performance. So, and by the time I was 11, my sister and I were in a harp and violin duo because I play the harp, and I'd already started getting very involved in playing lots of weddings. We even started doing corporate gigs a couple years later, and we've ended up being very, very active in that, especially at that time. I've also been very active in orchestras. I was part of the youth orchestra when I was younger, and now I'm a part of 2 orchestras currently. And again, continuing with that classical tradition, I do have my bachelor's in harp performance and am actually doing a master's in music theory to really get that aspect of everything. And in terms of the other performance stuff, again, I've performed as a soloist in concertos a couple of times, and I've also done some other performances as well with like less classical rep. And as a co-op member, I really joined in 2019 when I was unsure about where I was going to be going music-wise. So that's when I really broadened my horizons past the classical world, which I was so entrenched in for such a long time. And the co-op really helped me explore my roots, and also becoming more and more involved in Showcase as the years went on, with me being the artistic director for Showcase last year and really helping to make that a success. And a lot of that has really helped me just free myself in a way to go after what I really want, which is to really continue with harp, to not be constrained by genre, and to continue with music theory and working on some research on Argentine tango right now, funded by a grant, and we'll be finishing up my master's next year.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. I'm excited. There's already a lot of questions in the chat. So I guess I'm gonna just get started with our first one. So this is from Jules. Jules asked, what has participating in the co-op showcase tour taught you about performing? So yeah, either of you can answer it. Yeah, you can.
I think for me, definitely, anything you think you're doing like too exaggerated or too big is not necessarily so. It's really tough to see those subtle movements from when you think about how far the audience is in a show like the showcase. They're not going to see you, like make a little flinch or something, or you gotta really over exaggerate to be seen. Um, That's the first thing that comes to mind. I'll keep the brain train rolling.
All right, so probably one of the main things that I learned about performing that really taught me was that specifically in being a part of multiple songs in Showcase, you really have to get into a different mindset with every single song. Like, I've been a part of more dynamic, more high energy songs, and they're like, you really have to put on a show, like you have to put on a very energized face, and even in your performing gestures as a keyboardist and as a harpist, you have to really like bring out movements. You have to really think about it in that way, but then also realizing that during the very intimate moments where it's a quieter song, thinking about how it's just as important to make those come out, and you have to emote just as much as in the high energy songs. You have to be just as intentional, which I don't think I was being as intentional with the softer songs before I did Showcase.
Another thing I thought of as well was when it comes to performance, especially something like Showcase, preparation. It's all in the preparation, because if you aren't properly prepared, you can't just expect to like miraculously have it beamed to you from space while you're on stage. It's got to come beforehand. So that's learning your parts. Learn your parts for those of you that are in Showcase. That will save a lot of headaches. And just like take the rehearsal seriously, and perform in the rehearsals like you're performing on the stage. And then when you get on the stage and you have all the added stresses of having a big audience there and having the lights and just like the pressure of the moment, then all that practice kind of becomes second nature and you don't have to think about it as much. So it's definitely in the preparation. Don't take that for granted.
Yeah, and I might just do one last thing to kind of backpack off of that. So I guess piggyback off of that. So during the rehearsal process, I ended up realizing that you have to be very open to change when you are making a true live production, which isn't something you do a whole lot in the classical world. So it really taught me that you have to be so open to change, and knowing that sometimes as a performer, you don't see all of the possibilities that somebody who's not right in the performance can see.
Awesome. Thank you both. Actually, I wanted to follow up with Daniela. You were mentioning making the intimate moments impactful even with this slower songs. And I was just going to ask, what's a way that you have done that or found? Yeah. How did you curate those moments?
There are a couple of ways that I have curated those moments. Specifically in Showcase, I was often asked to do a bit of a harp solo thing. And often that's naturally a softer instrument. So one way that I would do that is to just, again, be very intentional with every note that I'm playing, to just do something like nice and instrumental. And the thing is, when you do something quieter, sometimes people will listen more closely. So making sure that there isn't a lot of clutter around, and there still can be clutter in quieter songs. So just basically stripping away everything except for one single instrument, or even something as simple as eye contact. Because eye contact and using the proper angles to do that really helps somebody connect with you and feel like you're really performing for them rather than only for yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, thank you, Jules, for that question. And oh, sorry, Jules has the next one too. So number 2. Okay, so In terms of defining a performance as a collection of moments created for the audience, what's a special moment that you've created or witnessed that has stuck with you? And I'll just read a couple, because some of the artists responded in the chat. Thomas mentioned giving little kids signed guitar picks. Jonah said the multiple times I've had an audience repeat after me or get them to mosh, which is awesome. Charlie said after performance, two young girls wanted to come say hi and get a picture with me, and it melted my heart. So, yeah, what are some of your moments that you found very special?
I'll actually involve a moment from very early on in my career. I was maybe 13. My sister was 14, and we were actually busking inside a mall, and we were playing, and then after we'd played a certain song together, then this one lady came up to us, and she ended up basically telling us how meaningful like our song choice was to her. And she ended up basically telling us all about her life story and the problems that she had in life, and that somehow, like, for that day, we just made her day a lot better. And I know that's a simple thing, and it's not a huge crowd, but sometimes those quite early career moments can be very impactful, and they can really stick with you. And I think it really changed the way that I viewed music, and made me realize you can really, with like the song choices that you do, with the way that you perform, you can really make a connection with someone that you've never even met.
I'll do a one co-op moment and then one non-co-op moment. So one, and there we have a picture of it, but one of my like, most memorable co-op showcase moments. I think, and I don't see him here. I don't know if he's with the co-op this summer, but Carl Harrison was doing a guitar solo. I don't remember what song. But we had this moment where we were like face to face, and um I just started laughing hysterically for some reason while we were looking at each other, and I think whatever he was playing I was just really into. um and that was a really special moment because it wasn't really manufactured, like um when you rehearse, you I guess there's some where you say, okay, now you guys are gonna do a back to back or whatever. But I think that one was like an organic one where I kind of just walked up to him and then he walked up to me, and then we just had that moment, and it was like it felt very organic and not like it was they told us to do this. So that one was a really special one for me. And then like someone said in the chat, the repeat after me, I always try to get the audience to sing along with me for my uh whatever I close with. And I think one of the most powerful musical experiences I've had is just being in a room with people singing together. And I always try to like incorporate that in my own show just because I know how impactful it was for me. And how impactful it has been as a audience member and someone, I guess, orchestrating that and conducting that. So I always try to have that audience sing along aspect in there.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Okay, next question we have from Alyssa. So Alyssa asks, how do you go about securing performances when places don't get back to you? And I guess to elaborate on that, if you have any booking tips and tricks as well in there. Yeah.
I'll say right now, I've been trying to book a tour on the West Coast and no one has been getting back to me. So that's not something that goes away. One thing to realize is the people that book those venues are getting emails like that every day and their inboxes are clogged. So don't take it personally. Another thing is you should be following up at the soonest 2 weeks after you send your initial email. Because the last thing you want to do is annoy a venue and not and kind of be blacklisted. So be respectful with your communication and in your follow-up emails. don't be like passive aggressive. And I find most of gig booking comes from like relationships. So I do get like a handful of just like cold email gigs. But like the ones that have been easiest to set up and have been the most like stress free have been ones where I'm opening for somebody or someone's got contacts at whatever venue that we're trying to book and they already have like a relationship already. So if there's a venue you want to play, go to shows at that venue and try to meet the person that um, booked that show if they're there, or just meet the band and don't do it in a way that's like, "Hi, nice to meet you. How'd you get this gig?" Because that's also not super cool. Um, just make friends because a lot of this is relationship and um, I don't want to say reputation driven, but it's certainly can be a deterrent if people know that you are like annoying with venues and um, kind of badgering them. So yeah, just be respectful, go to shows, try to meet people.
Yeah, and I think I'll echo what Zach has said quite a bit, that it is all about relationships. But one other thing that is such an important aspect is, especially now we have social media. So one thing is really following up with those connections that you make. And again, never making it, as Zach said, like you want like a gig, like genuinely show interest in engaging with other bands through social media as well. Like comment on their profile, comment on their posts, and say like, hey, that's so awesome that you're like releasing that album and stuff. And also like just again follow all of the venues that you do want to perform at or that you already have performed at, and maintain the relationships after you've done gigs and also before. And I just want to echo what Zach said about the communications, like reach out periodically, not every single day. And also like if you find that you're reaching out to like gigantic venues that want you to pull, like be able to already pull a crowd of 200 people, and you can only reliably pull a crowd of 30, there are also other venues that are okay with you pulling a steady crowd of 30 people. So it's all about managing your expectations as well. As another huge aspect of it.
Yeah, another thing I want to say too about the um like maintaining those relationships that you've started, I guess, and those like new acquaintances and just like the idea of generally supporting people on social media and whatnot. I think you could be really honest with yourself and um while it's great to be supportive, make sure your support is genuine. And if you find yourself commenting on someone's Instagram post just because you want that connection and not because you're actually interested in what that person is making, just don't do it. Um, I think it's easy to want to try to cast a wide net and try to be everybody's friend, but that's just like not the nature of art. Like there's going to be things that you don't like, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not for you. And there's no use in trying to manufacture these relationships if they're not based on like genuine interest and mutual respect.
Exactly. Make connections that matter to you.
Yeah.
I should have made that more clear. Don't just blast everyone and be like, because I don't reach out to every single harpist ever that I can find in the world, and do that. Like you only do it for the people who you genuinely want to build a bond with, and you have to be okay if a gig never comes out of it. That's important.
Yeah. And don't take it personally if someone isn't like reciprocating whatever attention you're giving them or um social media is such a weird animal. And so I think you're better off viewing that as something that's separate from yourself rather than um, something that is personal. So just take that with a grain of salt.
Awesome. Thank you both. Okay, so the next one we're going back to Jules with another question. So, what's something you learned about performing that you wish you knew earlier? Daniela, do you want to start us off with that one?
Yes, I would love to start that one. I know one thing that I learned about performing that I wish that I knew earlier was honestly not to be so hard on myself, because I used to be so self-critical of myself during every performance, and it made me unable to enjoy performing for a while. I think part of that came from being a part of a family that really, and part of an environment that really encouraged you to practice for several hours a day, every single day. And it honestly, a lot of that messed with my head a little bit. And I never thought that my performances were good enough. And it wasn't like performance anxiety or anything. My performances, I could always let go of everything. But anytime it was before a performance or anytime after a performance, I would just think about what could go wrong, or what went wrong during the performance. And it made me not realize, hey, I actually did a lot of good things during the performance. So really working hard, it wasn't an overnight shift at all, of with creating that shift to think, hey, I did really well in this performance, actually really helped, like really getting that positive self-talk in there. And I think it actually helped me enjoy performing a lot. It helped me let go.
Thank you. Zach, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. So for one, just want to echo being kind to yourself. When it comes to performance or anything of an artistic nature, like that's beating yourself up is going to be the worst thing you do for yourself. So just like, yeah, always be gracious and kind with yourself. I'll share an example actually from I had a double gig on Saturday, and here in BC right now it's really smoky, and this is me kind of making an excuse for myself. But I was it was near the end of like a 2.5 hour slot, and I had a voice crack when I was hitting a high note, and never in my performance life have I cracked live, and it happened. Um, and I'm thankful for how much performing I have done, because it really didn't phase me and I kind of just carried on. And even from that, I kind of was like finishing the song, but patting myself on the back, like, wow, you really just carried on and pretended like that didn't happen. And that's kind of what you have to do. But there was definitely a time when if that happened, I'd shrink into my shell and get really self-conscious. But that's the thing is with performing is people are gonna remember how you end the song versus one little mistake you made. And that's the thing I really like about performing is it's actually really forgiving, because people's attention, it moves with the progression of the song, if that makes sense. So you'll find that and even think about yourself. Maybe you're a super critical concert attendee, but typically you're not dwelling on the band's mistakes if you notice one, or at least I'm not. So just bear that in mind as well, like the mistakes. If you're professional about it and you don't acknowledge them and you just carry on, people are probably going to forget about it. Another thing, I've started taking notes so I don't forget things while Daniela is talking. So I find that the practicing for a performance is never the same as the performance. It prepares you for the performance, but being on stage and actually delivering that finished product shouldn't feel like the rehearsal, and don't be surprised when it doesn't feel like the rehearsal. Obviously it's going to be similar because the closer you get to the day, you do your tech rehearsal and you have all the lights and stuff and the blocking is done. But when it's go time, it's like it is a different energy. So prepare yourself for that and don't expect it to be exactly like the rehearsal. And another thing for me, I was like very nervous and self-conscious like in my early performing days, and that kind of only goes away with like exposure therapy. You just got to keep doing it until you just get more used to performing. Yeah. And it's kind of like never ending. Like it's gotten a lot better, but there's still always like, you know, moments here and there where feeling a little vulnerable or self-conscious of a mistake or something, and it's always you're always getting better at it, and you're always learning it. And that being said, like expect your performance to change as you do get more comfortable performing, because that's bound to happen, and that's kind of what you want to happen. Because the more comfortable you are on stage, that's going to reflect in the music that you're playing, and it's just going to be better.
Awesome. Oh, sorry, Danielle, were you gonna say something? Or I didn't mean to cut you off, just in case.
I was just gonna say one last thing, and this is more about being able to like really expose myself to different genres, is that if you play, like, for example, classical music, and you've also played some pop music, and you've also like played in or like rock or indie, like it's important to obviously be able to kind of put on what I call like a different performance face in order to really convey that easily. Like, I need to be different as a classical musician than as somebody who's doing Florence and the Machine, for example. But I think the most important thing is that you also never should lose sight of what connects all of those sides of you, so that it's not like you are three different performers. It's like you are the same performer, but you're stepping into a different role, but you never lose who you are. And that's going to be the most important thing for all of those multifaceted musicians out there who have different genres that they like to do and might have different genres that they use for different types of performances. It's important to never lose sight of who you are as an artist, and to be able to reunite that with all of your different performing identities.
Awesome. Thank you very much for those answers. I did want to follow up and ask, so Daniela, you said, developing your confidence, that mindset shift takes quite a while to build. And Zach, you were talking about that as well. Besides just getting more exposure and like playing, are there any specific strategies that you use? Is it just really intentional self-talk? We had co-op member Mark Wiley come in a little while ago and talk about how he uses meditation, and how that's helped like him gain confidence and kind of ground himself. So yeah, do you have any strategies that you use? And Zach, we can start off with you if you have anything.
Yeah, I'll just echo Mark and say, any sort of mindfulness practice, I think, is only going to benefit you in your performance and just in your life in general. I'm a big advocate of that. And it's been something I've been working on here in the Valley. But apart from that, it's really not, I haven't set any sort of, there's no magic exercise or anything. Like it's you got to be dedicated to what you're doing, and that involves doing it a lot over time. And for me, that's just how I've gone about it, and seen it as like a long-term pursuit of just improving, and little by little, gig by gig kind of thing. There's no shortcut or anything like that. Not that I've found, at least.
Yeah, and now I'll answer with a personal anecdote that I don't know if many people who are watching actually know. So for years, like since probably from when I was 9 to around when I was 19, I I absolutely despised my singing voice. I thought it was the worst. And the way that so it was a very long process since then, and it was because I got rejected from a choir when I was 9. And even though I'd worked really hard and had been actually classically trained for a few years and didn't really see why I couldn't have gotten in. So then I'd kind of convinced myself that my voice was absolutely horrible and atrocious. And I just never wanted to do that. So the way that I actually worked with it was that I didn't start with solo singing, because solo singing where it would be in front of a crowd, I wasn't ready for that yet. And I couldn't get into exposure therapy because I couldn't do that for myself, because I hated my voice too much to even stand hearing it when I sang. So what I did instead was a few years later, maybe I was like 12, 13, I ended up joining a school choir. So then for the next few years, all I would do is join my school choirs and I would sing. So that's one of my pieces of advice. If you can't do it alone, do it with a group. Because with a group, it can really help motivate you until you are comfortable doing it alone. And that's to like really, and then, yeah, I started afterwards seeking out a couple of solo opportunities within that. Then I joined an a cappella group in university to try to better that. And then finally, by the time that I was 19 and applied for the co-op for the first time, I was actually able to sing in my audition. And I was very proud of that. So I would say, if you're not comfortable enough doing it alone at first, you don't need to do it alone.
Yeah, I think Daniela touches on something that's really important, and that's there's going to be a way that works for you, and it's not necessarily my way, and it's not necessarily Daniela's way. Um, find like if that resonates with you, doing it in a group before you do it solo, definitely go that route. Um, like for myself, I'm like a kind of like a cold turkey person, so like I'm vegan, and when I went vegan, I just went vegan like right away, and I didn't like phase out anything. I just went right away. And the same thing with performing. I just went up solo and did it. Um, and by myself. And that's just my personality. And obviously everybody's got their own unique personality and experience. And there's going to be different ways of going about performing, but anything else we talk about in this Q&A, like none of this is gospel. This is all our own experience, and take what you want from it, but don't assume that our way is the way. There's a quote from a songwriter I really like, and he said there's art, and kind of like in the context of making a career for yourself, but there's as many ways to make it as there are songwriters. I know not everyone's a songwriter, but take out songwriter and put in guitarist, whatever you'd like. There's there's a way to make it in your own unique way, and it's not going to be the same as anyone else's. So keep that in mind, and also kind of take comfort in that your journey doesn't have to look like someone else's, and it's not going to. So if you've come to a decision and you're like, oh well, I don't know anyone else that's done this, don't worry about that. If it feels good to you, just do it.
That's awesome. Thank you both. Lots of good things to think about. Next question we have from Jordan. So Jordan asks, how do you create an interesting and dynamic performance as a solo artist? Zach, do you want to answer that one first?
Sure. It's really tough. I think a big part of having a really good solo performance is being in the environment that lends itself to one, which you only have so much control over. So really depending on the gig, like if you are really going after having a show that's like a listening room, really finding a venue or an opportunity that is going to set itself up to be a listening room, and that'll allow you to do your thing and not be worried too much. The thing with being solo is where we've got stuff going on here and we've got stuff going on here, so we can't really walk away from the mic, or we can't oftentimes doing kicks or you know, whatever athletic things you do in a high energy performance just aren't appropriate. So really just focusing on your performance and your expression, and doing that in an environment that is going to allow you to have the most attention on you, in front of folks that are willing to listen. At least like that's the most experience I've had, because that is kind of what I seek out in a performance environment, is a listening room. And obviously there's probably people in bands here that are playing more up-tempo stuff, and that's not what they're looking for. Same thing applies. Look for a venue that's going to be suitable for the kind of performance that you want to put on.
And I want to echo a lot of that. Like, it's all about, again, finding the place that's really suitable for you. But I also do think that some of the moments that you can create in a band are also ones that you can create as a solo artist. I mean, I'm a harpist. So basically, if I'm ever playing the harp, I just cannot move from my spot. It would require me to carry an 81-pound instrument elsewhere, which I don't think really suits itself to a live performance where a lot of movements have to be done quickly.
That'd be cool to see, though.
Yeah, I'd have to hit the weights more. But in any case, again, what you really want to do is focus on facial expressions, make sure that you make, again, good eye contact with someone in the audience. And you can even like at various points, like when you are in between songs, you can kind of change up where you are, use the transition space to do it so that you can connect with someone else in the audience. Then yeah, connect with someone else in the audience, even if you can't go around and connect with everyone in the audience during a single performance physically. By moving, angling can be very important. Eye contact can be important. Not having an absolutely dead facial expression can be very important, and that can be cultivated by just watching yourself in the mirror when you practice, not for the technique, because you've probably already got that down, but just so that you know how you're coming across. And it's all about, do you feel comfortable with how you are looking, performing to other people? And also just get a friend to practice solo performance on. Or hopefully it's a friend who will talk honestly with you and will not be afraid to tell you if they're not being engaged by what you're doing.
Some more things I'll add. I think I learned this from Tori, but if your songs all look the same or sound the same, people are just going to think it all sounds the same. So as much as you can, try to change up how your performance looks. So in a solo context, that probably just looks like either sitting or standing up. And just making it look different, even if it doesn't serve a huge purpose. And like sound wise, you can throw on a different reverb or take the reverb off, or just if you have that capability in your live setup, changing guitars, going from electric to acoustic, that kind of thing. And also when you are solo and there is potentially only two instruments being played at the same time, really being dynamic and focusing on your dynamics, and make the quiet parts really quiet, make the loud parts really loud, because they'll be a lot more obvious when it's just you and you don't have a band to hide behind. Yeah, and being really intentional with those loud and quiet moments too.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Joshua, I do see your question, but I'm going to jump to Charlie's just because it's more on the theme of dynamics and performing. So Charlie asks, and this one has to do with eye contact. So, if you're playing a guitar and singing lead vocals, for example, but you want to interact with another bandmate or make eye contact while singing, how could you do that without pulling away from the mic or turning to the side and losing that head-on quality? So, with the mic. And yeah, so this one, I guess it's more with the band, but even with the audience too, how can you kind of turn your head and make sure you're not kind of losing that connection with people? So Daniela, do you want to start off with this one?
First, I'll give you the heads up that I do not play the guitar, so I've mainly observed this. But one thing is that first of all, again, if you are in a band setting, which it seems like that's what Charlie is asking about, I would mainly say that it's not all on you. If there is a bandmate that you want to interact with who is potentially a bit more mobile in what they're doing, like for example, like just a guitarist, or in that case, then like if you want to create a moment where you are doing it together, get that other person to, like, for example, like lean against you, or to really come to you if you want to really showcase that person as well as you. That can be a fun thing to do if you are stuck in one place. Another thing that you just need to do is, I feel like I'm a broken record, but be very intentional with your angles, because depending on what mic you have in a live setting, like SM58s or something like that are often very popular in a live setting. It'll look kind of round. You can still do this and it would still be head on. You can still do this and it would be head on. There are ways to use that so that it would be head on. Also, some performers nowadays are using headsets. So then no matter how often you turn, it will still be head on. But I'm not suggesting necessarily that, but it's always good to consider all of your options in the tech world for that. But yeah, remember that there are different ways to angle yourself so that the mic can still hear you and you can interact with other members of your band, or you can interact with different angles of the audience.
And yeah, Zach, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. So if you really want to give your full attention to your bandmate that's on one side of you, you can ask yourself how important the part you're playing actually is. Like, if you stop playing, is it going to totally change how the song sounds, or can you actually afford to stop playing for a second and make a moment out of that? You drop your guitar, grab the mic, and you look over to your bandmate. That's a cool thing that happens at shows. Like, I don't see why you couldn't do that. And like Daniela said, it's kind of funny. I have an SM57 here, which is basically an SM58 without the windscreen. So if I go like this and I turn to the side like this, you're really not getting a whole lot of change in how it sounds. And even still, like in a lot, no one's expecting your live sound to be perfect. And if you think of the average concert attendee, they're not going to be like, oh, well, oh, they're not really looking straight at the mic. I'm having a bad time now. Like, that's just not realistic. Things go wrong live all the time. Things don't sound ideal. It's less about the quality of the sound and more about the experience you're giving people. And also a great time to interact with your bandmates is if there's a solo section or an instrumental section where you don't need to be at the mic. Yeah, I would argue that the best times to interact with your band are probably not when you're singing. So keep that in mind as well.
Awesome, thank you. So now going back to Joshelle's question, how would you describe your experiences with the music industry so far? What are some good or bad parts? Sorry, Danielle, if you want to answer that one, you can start off.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to start. I'll start it off. I feel like I've been in a lot of different parts of the music industry. I've been a part of like different performance circles. I've been a part of like weddings. I've dabbled in the corporate world. I've dabbled in like the more like stuff like showcase and those kinds of performance worlds. I've dabbled in the session world. So I've kind of been in a lot of different parts of what you might consider the music industry, and even parts of what you might consider not in the music industry. I would say one of the best parts about it, which kind of keeps what we've been talking about a bit so far, especially earlier, going, is really making connections, like genuine connections with a lot of different people who might have like a lot of similarities to you in the way they performing, or they might be very different in how you're performing. And making those connections, not for what they can get you, but in terms of genuine interest and in terms of actually getting you opportunities. And this isn't necessarily limited to you meeting other musicians. I found it while like meeting different clients and really getting to know certain clients that I've worked with, or like different agencies that I have interfaced with. Sometimes it's really interesting to find out what everyone's all about and what they love. And it's one of the most fulfilling parts about it. But also, there are certain bad parts that I have experienced. If you don't have a contract, people will really take advantage of you. Like such as like as a wedding musician myself, I have been at a wedding where a fountain was right next to me and nobody could hear what I was doing, not even the bride, who was supposed to walk down the aisle when we were performing. So that's one of the things that made me create a contract. Also performing at a venue where we'd been interfacing with someone, but then the venue didn't know that we were supposed to be performing there, so they didn't have the space for us, and they had to have us right in front of the utensil cabinet, where they kept taking out utensils, putting utensils back during the performance, and I had to constantly lean forward to do it. So certain things like that. Also, not getting paid until weeks after, because I didn't have a firm contract at the time. Those are certain parts that you will find. And also, as a female presenting musician, I've often found, and I have said this before, that it takes 3 times as much effort to garner respect as it would for a male performing artist of your same prestige. So one part of it that you might end up experiencing is that you have to really try hard to be respected, and that involves, I've noticed, having to do firm handshakes, having to basically have perfect business cards that I can just give at a moment's notice, and just naturally just having to try harder to maintain relationships with, you know, like corporations that might want to work with me or have me perform at one of their conferences, for example, than if an equivalent male presenting artist were to do the same. So that's an interesting thing as well.
Thank you. Zach, if you want to share.
Yeah. So I think the best things are just the people you meet along the way. Because, you know, as much as like we all love music and stuff, I'd argue there's more to life than that, and it's going to come down to the people you surround yourself with and the company you keep that is really going to leave a more lasting impact. So definitely the people you meet. Some other good things. It's funny. This is a good and bad thing with the financial aspect of the industry. It's really nice being able to work a job and then play gigs at the same time for some supplemental income. It really does go a long way. I'm gonna do good and then bad. And then some good things is applying for things and actually like getting that performance opportunity or getting into those things. Like that recognition is really nice, and it's sometimes far and few between, but it can be affirming when it um and validating when you get those opportunities. So um obviously like that's a nuanced thing. Finding validation in those things, and being really careful not to tie it in with your worth as an artist and a person, but also being able to like see those wins and accept those wins. Bad parts, financial. Obviously, we aren't always paid fairly, and that's like even more so with streaming and that whole world. Some other bad things, just taking gigs that I'm not a great match for. Um, I just play like a Saturday night pub gig, and that's not exactly the type of music I play. So had a bit of a learning opportunity there that it's not always going to be the gigs you're offered aren't always going to be the best fit for what you do, and just being really conscious of that, and saying no when you have to. Some and some other bad things. I think bad's a strong word, but I've had some weird interactions with fans and things like that that, you know, aren't totally welcome and warranted. So I feel like nobody really teaches you how to navigate those. So it's been an interesting thing to deal with and work through, but yeah, it's not great. And also with social media, these parasocial relationships that you form, and just everything that goes into those. It's not bad, but it's complicated, and it's not really like a two-way relationship that forms that way through social media interaction and stuff. So yeah, just also navigating those, and especially like when those people do end up coming to your shows, like really trying to bear in mind that these people know more about you than you think, and have a certain level of they th- I get the sense a lot of the time that they think they know me better than they do, and obviously there's only so much I put on social media um to share, and there's a lot. I would say 10% of my life is on social media maybe that I'm sharing, and 90% of it is like not there, so they're not really getting the full story, and just like keeping that in mind when you meet people, and just trying to be as gracious as you can. um Again, it's not a bad thing, it's just like a can sometimes be a tough thing to navigate, and yeah, something I think along with like performing is like an exposure thing, and just like spending more time doing it, and just trying to move through that with like grace and understanding.
I want to tug at a strand of what Zach said near the end about the public social media presence. And this goes for public perception in general. Again, one thing to remember is that to everyone else, your public image is you. So the realization in the industry that you have to curate your public image so that it's exactly what other people will want to see. And again, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's sometimes difficult to tell, but it can be lonely to realize that the public image that you have created like is one that you can be like maybe 97% honest about it, but then there is like that 3% of you that you think, hey, like if I showed that, then I'm not going to be as professional as what they expect of me. So it's the realization that specifically like when you are dealing with like clients, when you're dealing with patients, like remember like that you have to be so so careful with your public perception and all of that. Even like an answer, like say if a newspaper somebody interviews you for like a newspaper or for a TV slot, knowing that there's that like you can be as honest as possible, but there is always going to be a filter. That can be a lonely thing to, but it's in a way a reality, but it can also be lonely.
Wonderful. Thank you both. So the next question is from Rogan, and it's to Zack specifically. So Rogan says, I'm planning on attending Folk Music Ontario in October. Any advice on how to get the most out of it, especially in regard to hopefully showcasing there in 2025?
Yeah, well, congrats for going to your first FMO. It's so overwhelming and tiring, but it's a great time. Yeah, making the most out of any conference really. Go to the showcases. That's kind of like the most fun part about it anyway. So go to shows and read the room, but if that person seems open to being approached afterwards, don't be afraid to just go and say, hi, really liked what you just played. I'm me. Nice to meet you. And just try to make friends that way. It's actually really funny. I had a phone call today with somebody that I met at that conference in this past one in October, and we're like potentially moving in together in Edmonton in the fall. So you never know what can come of those relationships. And yeah, I mean, like the thing that's great about FMO is like the folk music industry is like a really heavily relies on touring for income and exposure, if you want to say that word. And so it's really nice to have like a kind of central meeting place for all these people that are all over the world for most of the year. It's kind of like this like a rendezvous is like a good word I like to use. And it's like it's great. You'll see so many like reunions between people in the hallways and it's like a really great vibe. I know like the price is pretty inhibitory, I think, but I think it's worth it and just like the community aspect of it. I'll see you there. I'm going.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I guess to kind of spin that for Daniela, if you have any advice on how you get the most out of any sort of performance, like how do you make sure you live in the moment of that sort of experience?
And then one way to really get the most out of a performance, or again, even attending an event or a conference, is always going to be through meeting people. Again, I feel like that's something that is said a lot, but I cannot emphasize that enough. And also just taking in everything that you want to take in, like if there are any performances that you're like particularly interested in watching, listening, making sure to go to those, making sure that if you're really interested in what they did, to talk to them after the fact, and to really do that. Like I can even, and that's not even limited to things that involve performing. If you are involved or want to be involved in other facets of music. I actually was recently presented at a theory conference in Scotland. And even though I did present at the conference, I also attended a lot of other conference presentations. And part of it is really interfacing with them. Like I attended all the conference like panels that I really wanted to go to. I also made sure to talk to any of them who had really interesting topics that I wanted to learn more about. Like also approaching it not as the smartest person in the room, but as someone who can learn a lot from everything that they're getting from it. And also just like if you know a few people there and they invite you to like an after event during any of the days, go. that's how you can make some like real connections that are like a bit more personal.
And I will say at FMO, those after events often go through the night and into the next morning. So be prepared for that too.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, the next question is from Thomas. So, how do you approach practicing and rehearsing? Do you have any unique techniques or routines, rituals, or pre or post performance? Or sorry, do you have any unique techniques or routines, pre or post performance? So, Daniela, do you want to start us off with that one?
Sure. First, I'll go for my practicing, because obviously practicing and rehearsing, two very different things. So first of all, practicing, the first thing that I will do in my own practice is find out like what sections are going to give me the most trouble, like what techniques, like if there's, for a singer, if there's a really high note that you somehow need to get to, like how do I get there? But also as a singer, not over exhausting your voice while practicing, knowing your limits, not going over it. Have some nice tea. Throat coat is very nice for that sort of thing to protect your voice. So as a singer, even as an instrumentalist, practice a section that you're unsure about, probably more so that you do become more sure about it, making sure never to over practice. There was actually a time that I was a part of like this thing called Kiwanis, and I could not compete in my category because I'd over practiced that morning. So my biggest thing is don't over practice, especially the morning of a performance. Make sure that you stop a little bit before you think you have to stop, especially if the performance is that same like evening if you are in the afternoon, or that same afternoon if you are in the morning. So that's a practicing thing. Also making sure that you practice techniques a lot so that you keep your versatility, whether it's vocal versatility or instrumental versatility, making sure that you always stay warmed up. And then with rehearsing, if you are doing it yourself as a solo artist, looking at yourself in the mirror, making sure that you know how you are presenting yourself, or taking a recording of yourself, like a video recording, an audio recording, and playing it back to you. That's what I do. And then I can see, how do I look and how do I sound and how can I become more dynamic in my own performance? And if you're rehearsing with other people, it's all about being really open to other people's input, and also just being willing to work with your band, or being willing to listen to your conductor in an orchestra, for example. And one thing that I have done personally, I guess, I'm not sure how unique it is, but I will often wear gloves before a performance. And that is because my hands get cold rather easily. And as a harpist, and I would imagine as a guitarist, and as anyone else who uses their hands a lot, which is most instruments, you want your hands to be in tip-top condition. And I find that just wearing gloves a little before it, like really thin gloves before the thing, and then taking it off a little bit before, can help my hands stay in the best condition that they can. So I guess that's my unique little routine. And my other weird thing is that for classical performances, I will barely practice the day of a performance. And this might seem counterintuitive, like, shouldn't I be practicing a lot for my performance if it's the day of? But my philosophy behind it is like, I can't really change anything the day of. I've already prepared enough before that, and I don't need to overexert myself the day of. I've already created my habits. I've already done that. And then, yeah, post-performance, very intentional, positive self-talk. and making sure that you actually compliment yourself, which sometimes has to be a very intentional thing. And yeah, just talking to me.
So I'm not a classical musician. I practice just by playing. I'm always playing just in like my regular life, so I don't really have like a practice or rehearsal regimen, at least for like for my own gigs and for when I'm playing my own cover and original repertoire. Although it's pretty rare nowadays, but if I'm playing in someone else's band, just playing along with recordings, if they have a version of the track without your instrument in it, that's like ideal. But obviously, like it's kind of a little more rare in my experience. But yeah, playing along with the recording, concentrating on the harder sections for sure. Yeah, I mean, as a vocalist, like being mindful of what you're doing with your lungs in the days leading up to a performance is something I practice, if you catch my drift. And that goes for any substances. Just if you want to be your best, just do the things beforehand that are going to make you be at your best, whatever that may be for you.
Wonderful, thank you. And I see that Lyric has joined us now. Hi, Lyric, thanks for being here. So we'll just take a quick pause and I'll read out Lyric's bio before we get to Chelsea's question next. So, Lyric Dubee is an award-winning multi-genre artist born and raised near Toronto, Canada. Proficient and at ease playing many genres, Lyric extensively studies guitar and vocals in many mediums. Lyric performs in a number of configurations, including duos, trios, quartets, big bands, and more. Aside from working on his own projects, Lyric makes a majority of his living playing for others both live and in the studio. As a competent sight reader and having played on over 150 recorded tracks, Lyric has the skill set and experience to deliver the best performance to your project. After 15 years of training and performing, he has played over 900 shows, ranging from weddings and fine dining to cathedrals and auditorium stages. He toured internationally and is endorsed by Ernie Ball Music Man Guitars, DV Mark Amps, and Guitar Center. Well versed in rhythm and lead guitar, Lyric can provide the performance to fill out your band, as well as supplying backing vocals for your upcoming show or tour. So yeah, thank you very much, Lyric, for joining us. We'll start with you for this next question, if that's okay. So, and then get to Daniela and Zack as well. So Chelsea asks, how do you work on your stage presence and confidence when performing? Any tips? Oh, sorry, Lyric, I think you're muted. That's all good. We'll toss it over to Zack or Daniela then first. Zack, if you want to start.
Can you repeat the question?
Of course. So how do you work on your stage presence and confidence when performing? Any tips?
Just for me personally, it's again been like that exposure thing, just doing it and doing it on a consistent basis. Because it's really tough to practice the actual thing of performing when you're not actually performing. So just putting yourself in positions where you're performing as much as you can is going to be the best way to do it, I think. Obviously, the preparation aspect of that is important as well, but for the actual performance itself, you kind of have to just perform to get better at it.
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yep, you're good.
Excellent. Sorry I'm a little late, guys. Thanks for having me, Emily, Daniela, and Zack. It's great to see so many familiar faces. Yeah, I wholeheartedly back up what Zack just said. The best way to work on your live stage presence and the whole shebang is to just do it. Get out there, play as many live shows as possible. Go to open mics, go to jam nights, and I think it's important to also go to concerts too. Watch and see what your favorite artists are doing. So go see an artist that's playing the level of shows you'd like to be playing, And if you want to be playing stadiums, that's fantastic. But make sure if you're currently playing coffee houses and you want to get to playing some slightly bigger bars, go see some other local bands at some slightly bigger bars. See how they're interacting with the crowd. See what you like and don't like, and try to mimic some of that and bring it into your live performances. And as Zach said, most importantly, just get out there and perform. Put yourself in those situations.
And I think I'll echo what both of them have said. I think all of us agree that the best thing to do is just to go out and perform. And I mean, like, if you want to do a tiny bit of preparation before you actually perform, again, you can always like put on like a mini practice performance in front of some people who like maybe like don't hear you perform that often, but like who are supportive of you, and again like who are willing to give their opinions in a nice and constructive manner. Although I also will acknowledge that that is not a replacement for actually performing, so that should be in supplement to actually performing at some of the places that Lyric has said. So, but that cannot replace it, but it can certainly help. And just getting yourself into situations where you are exposing yourself to other performers, again, just as Lyric has said. And even, I know there are some people who do have some classical expertise. If you are in an orchestra, I know perhaps a couple of you have been looking at like some of the soloists that have been doing it. If you want to get better at being a classical performer, even going to some of those concerts as well, seeing how they do it. So this is a thing that's very universal, no matter what genre you're doing.
Awesome, thank you all. So our next question is from Thomas. So Thomas asks, what's the biggest challenge you faced in your music career and how did you overcome it? So Lyric, if you want to start us off with that one, and then we can go to Zach and then Daniella.
Oh, this is a big one. Okay, I'll keep it trim. The biggest challenge I face in the music career, I think, is being a full-time musician. It is the never-ending work of, especially if you want to be a session player, there's always someone that's going to be coming up that's going to be better than you. Staying on top of your craft, staying true to yourself, and as an artist, I think burnout is a very serious thing that doesn't get talked about enough. I think it's really important, and some of my biggest difficulties as an artist have been burnout and have been competition and keeping up with workload. And I think the most important thing for me overcoming some of these adversities is consistency. Consistency in my practice, consistency in my day-to-day life. Build routines. You healthy mind, healthy body. These things, you'll hear me preach a lot, and I know that my friends here will most likely agree with me. But that is the consistent struggle that I see myself facing. There are, of course, lots of independent times that I've met with adversity, but that is the one thing I think is consistent across the industry and my career as a whole.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Sure. I think for me, has been trying to find the balance between it has a lot to do with what Lyric said too about certainly the aspect of relying on music as an income. It's really been finding that balance of artistic fulfillment versus making ends meet, and really trying not to let one tread on the other. It's a tough balance because I have like for a time like relied on music solely for income, and I don't do that anymore, just because that didn't work for me, and I found that at least in the way I was doing it, it was making me kind of resent the gigs I was playing, and so I've moved away from that and trying to really only take the gigs I want to do now, and it's working out much better, at least for how I'm feeling about performing and how I'm spending my time musically. But I think it's certainly in like your emerging stage and your beginning stage, it's kind of going to be something you're figuring out for a little while, until you're a little bit more established and you have different, I guess once you're more established, you have more leniency with that kind of thing, and you have maybe a bit more of a revenue stream kind of locked down and not as fickle as it is earlier in your career. That's all I got. I'm just gonna run to the bathroom if that's okay.
No problem. Yeah, Danielle, you can take us away.
Yeah, this one like touches on a couple of similar things to especially like what Lyric said about burnout, specifically in what happens after you've burnt out, and how do you recover from that, or how do you recover from a big break? Because as I did mention, I was very active in music as a child. And after I'd done a couple of my big performance exams for harp and piano back right before I started university. When I actually started university, I actually started doing it in science and business. So had basically stepped away from music and had taken a break from doing anything, at least revenue-wise, with music. So, but after the fact, after I came to the realization that I really did want to have music as a career again and wanted to do that, I had to come to terms with, how am I going to get this back again? So that was my big struggle, that one moment. And the way that I overcame it was first because some of my interests also lie in academia. I was like, I have to get into university for music rather than university for science and business. So that's one step. Second step, find more opportunities to perform, start putting myself into the realm of like maintaining those same connections that I let slip away before, and being like, I was like taking a break for a while, but like now I'm back and I realized that this is what I really want to do. And just like really maintaining those genuine relationships that I let fall to the wayside for those 2 years. And third, actually applying for the co-op. You can even really bring it to like applying for like a lot of other opportunities and getting yourself back into the realm of getting you performing and getting you like genuinely making connections with people. And then number 4, just the long journey of me realizing, what do I really want out of music? And that was very different from what I was told that I should want from music when I was a child. And all 4 of those aspects are what got me back into the realm of music and making an income out of music and being on the steps to hopefully at some time getting more entrenched even in the academia and in the work world of music after you've taken a break for a couple of years.
Wonderful, thank you all. So the next question we have is from Jordan, and it is a question for Zack. So Jordan asks, you've used an effects pedal to create a layer of ambiance in your set. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah. So that just came from, well, I was inspired by an artist by the name of it's a single guy who just hires out his band, but he's known as the Dead Tongues. And I saw a live session that he did that he kind of had this like really airy kind of atmospheric sound, and I really liked how it sounded and how it complemented the songs he was playing. So I tried to do it myself, and literally all I did was just set up a patch that had like a really long reverb tail, and then I'd use a volume pedal. Actually, Lyric, you put me onto the Ernie Ball Jr. tuner volume pedal. Yeah, I got one of those, and would just like swell in notes and just do it on a loop, and I would just do like the root and the third or the root and the fifth, and just kind of let it ring out and then play over top of that. What I've also done is worked with producers to create like a track and play along with the track. And that was like something I don't really do that as much anymore. It's something I would do again, but just I kind of just wanted to try it and see if I liked it. And I think the kind of sounds I was making aren't exactly what I was envisioning, but I mean it's good to just try those things and really and just try to change it up and keep it fresh. But yeah, literally all I did was loop a really long sustained reverbed note and add like literally just like root notes and thirds and just keep it really basic. And I'd also try to do it in a octave range that wasn't going to like muddy up what I was playing on the guitar or singing. So that's also something to be conscious of if you're going to have any sort of like kind of like sound bath type thing. Try to keep the frequency spectrum kind of carved so that your vocal and guitar can be happy and not stepped on by the other stuff that's going on. Keep it simple.
I'll kind of hop in here and just to add on the note of effects. One of my favorite effects for, and I know what Zack does, is quite excellent, and one of the things that I think really help when I'm playing similar styles of music is a shimmer reverb effect. It's nice in that you can get a long tail like you would a plate, but the way a shimmer works is you can often have an octave up reverb. So it's a bit of a modular effect which stays out of the way of you're playing a lot of chords. You can have, you know, a big pre-delay on your shimmer. You have a nice ambience that comes in when you're playing heavy chords, keep a low blend. You don't have to worry about it muddying up too much. It gives you some kind of little bit of something extra. That's it's one of the things that it's definitely a purchase that you're gonna have to go find a reverb pedal that has shimmer. But if you're serious about making that kind of ambiance, it can be it's one of my favorite tricks that I like to use.
It's funny that you mentioned the purchase. I was gonna say, definitely if you have that vision, go for it. But really try to dial in whatever you're trying to go for with the gear you have. I think that's first and foremost what you should do is whatever you got, really try to master it and get the most out of it before you go spending money. Yeah, I think that because that's what I did is I just tried to figure it out with what I had, and it you learn a lot of stuff about the gear you have and like what it's capable of. Like I've got like it's almost a meme at this point, but I've got a Boss Katana, and you can plug that into your computer, and you can all the reverbs on there. You can adjust the tails, you can adjust the pre-delay. I was really quite surprised what you could do with it. Not to make a sales pitch for Boss, but yeah, just like really seeing like what features you have at your disposal and just trying to use them.
Yeah, I'll further back that up or just kind of piggybacking off each other here. The Boss Katana is an absolute unit for the price. Yeah, like Zach said, work with what you got. Spending money is an inevitability that comes with being a musician and liking gear. But yeah, use what you have available to you. It's not the end-all be-all, and with enough time and dedication, you can make most things sound quite excellent, or at least get a lot more out of it than you think you might be able to. And I know with acoustic instruments, it's much the same.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, our next question is from Shalisa. So, Shalisa asks, as a vocalist, it's my job during a performance to entertain the audience, dance, MC, and sing well. Do you have any advice regarding moving and dancing while singing and speaking? So I guess this one, we can start off with Lyric and go to Zach, and then Daniella, if you have anything to add. Definitely, I know with your 80-pound harp, it might be challenging, but yeah, you can jump in after that.
Yeah, I hate to, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, you just got to kind of do it. Like Zach was saying the first time, you got to put yourself in these situations. If you're going to be jumping around and doing this stuff live on stage, you need to jump around and do this stuff live in rehearsals. It's all about endurance, and I think there's a certain element of, you need to practice these skills. If you're just a vocalist, and I say just a vocalist, it's I think one of the most difficult and the most accomplished instruments out there. That being said, if you don't have anything to do with your hands, you're going to be spending your time interacting with the crowd, interacting with your audience, interacting with the song. So practice those things, just the way that a guitar player would sit there and practice the parts that they're going to be playing for that show live before they get up and do it. Practice the things you're going to be saying between your songs. Practice things you're going to, make sure you have enough breath for it. If you're going to say, at the breakdown of the song after the great big high note, are you ready, Toronto? Do you have enough breath left for that? Have you practiced that in the rehearsal? Things to consider. Yeah, putting yourself in real life situations I will forever say, is the best teacher that you can do. So mimic those as much as you can. I know Daniella was talking about putting on some home concerts for your friends and family. That's a wonderful, wonderful idea and a great way to test a lot of these things out. So I would heed the advice of both of my peers here.
So I don't know how many people are familiar with what I do, but I'm pretty low key and not exactly the jump around on stage kind of person or artist, but yeah, definitely making that part of your practice. I'm sure you guys have interfaced a lot with Fura, and that's something that is like quintessential to their live show. So definitely referring to Fura and their what they do to prepare. They'll definitely have better advice than I would. But I can only imagine just preparing in a way that's I think a lot of people think that the things that happen at concerts are spontaneous and organic. A lot of it is rehearsed and sort of burst your bubble if you didn't know that, but kind of doing the same thing and rehearsing. Even if you think you're the one and you're going to be able to come up with some really awesome moments just like off the top of your head. Probably not the case. Could be the case. I don't know you, but yeah, don't just rely on your on your improvised brilliance to get you through a performance. Practice.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. I actually do have quite a bit of experience in this because I was a singer, part of an a cappella group for a while, so we actually had to learn choreography while singing. So this is something that I can speak on. One thing that was really important for me is really taking it in a few steps. First of all, making sure that you really know what you're going to sing, making sure to practice like what positions do I want to be in throughout the song. And before practicing how to get to each of those positions, practice like first of all, like what's my stance going to be when I sing this? Is it giving me enough support? And that's the second step after you've learned the song. Third step, practice every single way that you move from one position to the next. And then practice singing with it after that. Making sure, am I still supported when I do all of my movements? If not, what do I have to change so that I can sing properly while I do perform? And again, one of the reasons why you need to have your music down pat is because you don't want to be confused. You want to be able to bring in like however you're moving on stage effortlessly. Well, not effortlessly, but essentially you need to bring it in when you already have a solid foundation. And then it's important to practice, as Lyric said, the things that you don't think you would need to practice. Like practice, how do you get into a song after you have given a little like intro thing about your band? How do you go and thank everyone after you have finished on a really high energy finale song? And how much time do you take in between that? All of these things, and that's it, like a lot of this is going to be very planned. And it is so important for everything to be so deliberate and for you to make the moves that best suit your voice, your lung capacity, your style. How is that all going to be showcased? And how are you not going to get swallowed up in your dance moves?
One thing I want to add is while it's good to rehearse and have all those things dialed beforehand, you have a cheat sheet in your set list that you bring on stage with you. So make notes, write arrow here, thank XYZ, especially if you're showing up to a venue and you don't know the staff there. Make sure you thank the place and remember where you actually are and don't get the city wrong or anything like that. Yeah, writing down like those little details, thanking the sound guy, like it may seem like a no-brainer, but if when you're in like the heat of the moment and like the adrenaline's running, those things blow your mind. They've blown my mind. So yeah, use your set list as a cheat sheet for anything, for names, for choreography, for anything that you might need to remember.
Big time hot tips there, 100%.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys. Perfect. Okay, so our next question is from Thomas. So Thomas asks, what do you feel is the most rewarding part of being on tour? So Lyric, in your bio, it says you toured internationally. So do you want to start and speak a little bit about that and your experience?
Yeah, to be honest, one of the reasons I chose music as my career, there's many reasons. One of the biggest ones, though, is that I got to travel. I love traveling. I really, really do. I like seeing new places in the world. I like meeting new people. These are things that are on the top of my list for, why I got into this. One of the benefits to touring, of course, are those. I think tour life itself it's something that is rather glorified. Make no mistake, it's exhausting. When my first international, big international tour was China. We did 14 shows in 15 days, different city every night, with an average travel time of 6 hours. No bus, public transportation. It was brutal. That being said, the end of the day, what really makes it worth it for me, that was a really rough tour. I've had really easy tours. I've had really great tours. You know what I mean? They come in and vary. I think part of what's really enjoyable is not necessarily knowing what to expect until you're on the road, and the shows itself. Enjoy the performances. At the end of the day, if you don't enjoy performing, touring is the wrong thing for you to do. There's lots of other ways to be involved in music, that are enriching, fulfilling, and even lucrative. It doesn't have to be touring. But if performing is something you love, then it's absolutely for you, because there's no other instance in where you get to perform quite so much with quite so much variety. I think that's the other thing I'd like to mention. I've done a lot of international performances, of course, as mentioned, but a lot of them are also residencies. So, I would spend half a year in Bermuda, where I'm performing in one instance, that was the same bar every night, 5 nights a week, 3 hours straight, no breaks. It got arduous, most certainly. It got a little tiring. It got a little boring even at times. And, some nights are better than others, and that happens. And the next time I went back, I was like, look, I don't want to just play the same bar. Get a DJ for this night, that night. I'm not missed on these 2 nights. Get a jazz player in for some dinner music. They have a really great quartet in the island. I play solo jazz too, but you should hire the quartet because they'll bring people out. It's better for the venue. Communicating with the venues is a big thing. That's a random side note. But the nice thing about tour is that it's a different set of faces every night. It's a different venue. It's a different crowd. It's a different city. And to pay back to what Zach said on the set list thing, write the names on your set list. You have no idea how much things blend together when you're on the road. I've made that mistake before. I've learned the hard way. One of the most, I think, enriching and valuable things for me in touring is the fact that you get so many different experiences in such a condensed space of time. And that, I find, really fuels my creativity. When I come back from a tour, I'm more stoked than I've ever been to hit the studio. It's what I want to do. As soon as I'm back, I'm like, all right, hit the writing room, hit the studio, let's get ready for the next one. It's very addictive, for me at least. And that's my drugs. Anyways, I'll pass it on from there.
So I haven't done a ton of touring. I did one little weekend tour in 2021, and then I did 2 weeks through Western Alberta and one show in BC in April/May of this year. And it was like the best time of my life. It was amazing. It was an in the round tour, so there was 3 songwriters, and each show we did was in the round. And if you aren't familiar with that, it's basically trading songs. Like you kind of work your way in a triangle in our case, because there's 3 of us. But one person plays their song, you give a little blurb about your song, and you kind of do that. We did 2 sets each night, and felt like cheating because I played 6 songs in an hour and a half and got paid the same. So it felt a bit like a cheat code. But it was like the best time. I feel like you're in like an alternate reality when you're on tour like that. Like you aren't you play somewhere and then you drive away for hours, and it's like you're just not living in the same way that you were beforehand when you're in, your day job or whatever you're doing when you're not on tour. The best part, most fulfilling part about it was hanging with your friends. Like we were lucky that we all got along super well. Like we all knew each other beforehand, but we had never spent that kind of time together. And that's something that can really make or break a tour, is if you're on if you're on tour with someone that you don't like that much, you don't get along with a lot. It's going to be really tough because no one really tells you or can really like relay to you how much time and weird situations you're going to be in with the people you're on tour with. You're going to be sleeping on basement floors, at least from the beginning. Like I slept on some basement floors and had some 3-hour nights of sleep. Cars break down, and the people that you're with when that happens, you want to be able to trust, and also just know that they're not going to freak out, and also know yourself that you're not going to freak out, and that you're not going to get mad, or these people aren't going to, get mad. Like there's a lot that can happen on tour that happens away from the stage. It almost is like the performances are like 5% of it, and the 95 is like getting to each venue and setting up the accommodation, booking it all. And it's a great time amidst like the chaos that it can be, and all the different variables. It's like super fulfilling to like go through it, especially when there's adversity, like making it through whatever it is that's setting you back, and still giving a really good show and getting a good response from the crowd. Like yeah, it's just it's a really cool and fulfilling experience if you're someone that really likes to perform. Yeah, do recommend. I think I totally have gotten away from the question, which is fine, I think. But yeah, touring's the best.
First of all, you'll know that I have a very different career trajectory than my 2 colleagues over here. But one thing that I have done is I've actually done a bit of traveling with my orchestra, in order to like do like some of that kind of performing. Although I would say it's a very different thing being in such a big group of people. You're just like on a bus, and you might head over to some places, and then you end up performing here, and then get back on the bus. Then
Or the
you
station
perform.
wagon.
Well, I mean, it's a full orchestra, so it's like
Oh,
60,
your bus. Yes, yes.
70, yeah, like, but yeah, like 60, 70 people. Very, very interesting. A lot of people there. It's definitely different once you get to bond with that many people in a completely different country. That can be very interesting. And I think that is a very rewarding thing about being there. You just get to bond, as Zach said, on a deeper capacity with the people that you end up traveling with. And another interesting thing, I know this doesn't have that much to do with the question, but sometimes as a harpist, I was actually able to use a harp that was already at the different location. So sometimes, occasionally, if you have like a very large piece of equipment, they might already have that at like a different venue. So just ask about it. For example, like, hey, do you have a harp that I could use there? Rather than me having to bring my own from Canada. And if they say, yeah, we have this type, we have this, then obviously, like, make sure that it's reliable, make sure that it isn't just better if you bring your own. But then if you do end up having to use that, test it early, test it very, very early, because you are performing on it, and you want to make sure that you actually want to perform on it, even though there's only so much you can do when you are in a different country or in a different place. But I think, yeah, the most rewarding thing is really making those connections. And again, being able to interface with people that you wouldn't be able to interface with if you weren't on a tour.
So another thing I was going to add is sometimes if you're fortunate enough, you get to meet some of the people that have only supported you like over the internet. And like that's like also like a really cool experience to be able to put like a human being behind like the username. That's also super fulfilling.
Wonderful, thank you all. So my next question is actually for Daniella. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about your career in your master's in music theory. How did you choose your school? What was the application process like? And yeah, just a little bit more about the academic side of music.
Well, as you might have heard, my bachelor's was actually in heart performance. So at first, like my application, at first, like I just want to preface this by saying I was not expecting to go into theory at all, even a year before I applied for it. But sometimes you end up finding a passion that you didn't expect. But yeah, my process behind it was I had to look into a few different universities. Then I ended up starting the application process. You have to really come up with an application package. Like contact your references early. And when I mean references, whether you're in the academia world or whether you're in the performance world, I've had experience of both. It is important to make genuine connections. In the case of the graduate program, it's nice for genuine connections to be able to vouch for you when you are trying to enter your next career path. It matters a lot. For me, it was also making sure that my writing materials, because you have to send in a couple of writing samples so that they know what they can actually judge you on. You sometimes have to do a personal statement depending on the university. And you have to send in your transcripts. That means working super hard in university so that people have the confidence that you will do well in graduate school. Because once you get into graduate school, it's pretty much understood, at least where I'm going, the master's in music theory, it's pretty much understood that you are capable of being there. And it's all about how far you can get. But at first you have to clear the hurdle of how do I show them that I'm deserving of being there? And then you often have to do an interview as well, which I ended up having to do. And it's all about being on about it, and especially if you are coming from a performance lens and deciding to go into theory. If you end up mentioning that you performed something very significant, they might ask, how does this relate to like your music theory? Can you tell me about that? So be prepared to answer anything about music theory or your preferred academic field in correlation to your performance if you have mainly focused on performance beforehand. And now I'm in the interesting career trajectory of the fact that I'm in my master's of music theory. One important thing is to be applying for grants. To get good at grant writing, this is going to also be a thing in your performance career. You want to be able to get grants. You want to get good at writing so that when people see your application, they actually want to give you money. Let them know like what exactly like would you use the money on? Why is like the research that I'm doing, why is like why is what I'm doing valuable to you? It's not about how is it valuable to me. It's like, how can I contribute to this field? Or how can I contribute to the music industry or to this genre? And why should you give me money? Grants are going to be a huge thing. And I think other people can attest to how useful grants can be in really boosting your music career. So yeah, I have like the SHRC CGS and grant from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada that's helping me fund my own research right now. And it's also gave me like the means to present at a conference in Scotland that I got accepted to. Another reason why you want to be really good at writing. And again, I think grant writing really translates to performance as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really interesting. Cool. I guess so we have about 10 minutes left. So I guess if nobody in the chat has any more questions, we'll wrap it up with if the speakers could give one last piece of advice to the group, what would it be? And I'll let Lyric start us off, and then we'll go to Daniella and then Zach.
One more piece of advice. Do you have a specific area in which you want the advice directed to? I'm assuming live performance, but
live performance, but also we have a lot of emerging artists and also pre-professional artists in the call right now. So just in their music careers more generally too.
Right on. Yeah, number one piece of advice is enjoy it. If you don't love what you do, why? If you pick the wrong job if you're trying to make money. I'll tell you that for free. There is way better ways to make a good income. That being said, there are no better ways to do what you love. And I don't think there's anything quite as fulfilling as doing music for not even just for a living, but just in your life. I think it's important to stay diligent. I think it's very easy to get sidetracked in today's society with a lot of distractions around us, i.e., a lot of means of entertainment, be it your phones, movies, TV, Netflix, video games, you name it. Stay focused on what it is you love, nurture it. It's like anything. It's like going. People who really love going to the gym and working out. You notice they get addicted to it. Music is exactly the same. I will always stand by that. It's important to put time into what you love, and it will reward you for that. As far as other advice, keep your head on straight, stay humble. Watch out for that. Speaking from experience, it comes to get you. And don't listen to your peers. Take all the advice you can, take it with a grain of salt, and make the best decisions you can with the information you have given to you. Don't turn down opportunities. Those are all my hot tips. I'll pass it on from there. Thanks, guys.
All right, then I'll go next. My first thing is for those early career musicians who might not have the most live performance experience. And that one is just don't be worried if you find yourself wanting to do many different things, or if you find yourself confused as to what direction you want to head into with your music or with performance. It's perfectly normal and natural for you to not know exactly what you want to do. And that doesn't mean that you can't have really valuable opportunities from it. All of this is going to just help you explore yourself and explore your brand and explore exactly how you want to be as a musician. And it does require some exploration and some trial and error. And all of that is perfectly okay. And then another thing is I guess this is going to be, if you are in room, especially some of you are probably going to be in showcase, like always be willing to try a lot of different things that you wouldn't think to try. This would be the case in showcase. This is the case also in any other live performance coaching. This is going to be the case for any live performance. See something that a local artist is doing and say, what if I tried that, even though I'd never thought of it before? So just be unafraid to try different things. And then the last thing, be yourself. No matter what, never lose sight of who you are. Continue chasing that feeling that really grounds you to music, but also remember that if you need to take a tiny bit of a break for yourself, it's fine. Just know that you can get back on the grind, and then as long as you are really authentic to yourself, music is going to be more worth it than if you lose sight of who you are.
Yeah, Zach, you can wrap it
Sure.
up.
Yeah. So be kind to yourself. In this, in the pursuit of anything, starting from the beginning, you're going to make mistakes, and just being able to work through those mistakes with grace for yourself and forgiveness for yourself is just going to be the best way forward. It's going to keep you from hating it. It's just going to do you good in the long run. So just be really kind to yourself, and try not to beat yourself up, even though it may seem easy to. Listen to yourself. If everybody, it is really important to listen to the feedback of your peers, especially those that you trust. But ultimately, you are the person that's calling the shots. And if everyone's telling you one thing and you really don't feel like doing that one thing, don't do it. The thing, as a songwriter, at least the thing that is going to propel you forward is your taste. And you are the only one that has the taste that you have. So really doubling down and betting on yourself in that way is just what's going to work out best for you. Maybe not other people, but for you, that's what's going to keep you the happiest. Don't force anything, and always be in pursuit of what you want and not what you think you want or what you think other people want for you. Keep an open mind, because nothing is going to happen the way that you thought it would or you think it will. So just be super open to opportunities and maybe things that you didn't think were going to be part of your journey. Not to say yes to everything, but be open to it. And then when it comes to performance opportunities specifically, run them through the filter of these three things. One, is it going to be good money? Is it going to be a good opportunity? And is it going to be fun? Any gig that you take should ideally fulfill two of those things. Less ideal one, but if it's none of those, don't do the gig. And even like that's a good kind of like system to run any potential gigs through if you're on the fence. But if say it checks two of those boxes, if you really don't want to do it, don't do it. It's not the end of the world. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and like that is so real. Things can move really slowly in this career, and things can move really fast. It's going to be a up and down all the time, and just really learning to ride those ebbs and flows with compassion for yourself is just going to be the thing that keeps you in it for the long run, because that's what it's about. Is the long run. We're not about immediate gratification, because those instances are nice, but when it comes to a career, that's just not the name of the game. So it's all about the long term and doing the things that's going to keep you in the game long term, whether that's mentally, physically. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Daniella, Lyric, and Zach. We'll give a silent round of applause here. Thank you so much for coming out, and thank you to everyone who came to watch. You gave us a lot to think about, and really, that was really informative and engaging. So thank you so much. And yeah, wonderful. So I guess to wrap up, to our co-op members, I've sent out the feedback form, and make sure you fill that out before you clock out. But otherwise, I believe we are wrapped up here and we are good to go. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks so much, everyone, and thanks, Emily, for hosting. Much appreciated.